Okay, welcome back to the Windows 8.1 UX Design Jumpstart. I'm Chris Mayo. I'm a UX evangelist here at Microsoft.
I'm Martin Therian. I'm a user experience evangelist with Microsoft in the Netherlands.
And in this session, we're going to be talking about the Windows Store, both from the perspective of how do I get into the Windows Store, how do I publish my app, what are the things that I need to think about, as well as designing for monetization. So how am I going to take the great, compelling scenarios that I've created for my app and make sure that they get to every single user across the planet that loves the app and rates the app really highly and tells their friends, and then I as an app publisher become super, super successful. So it's kind of interesting if you kind of follow what we've been doing over the course of this Jumpstart. We've been kind of started off talking about coming up with an idea for the app and then how to design the navigation and layout of your app using built-in controls. And then started talking about kind of some of more of these external kind of experiences, like with contracts being able to stitch apps together into more complex scenarios or more advanced scenarios, or maybe participating in extensions for Windows and so on. And then thinking about searching and sharing and integrating into the start screen. And now we're really thinking about, like, now that we've got all that design, we've gone through and decided what our app's going to be and what it's going to do. Now we're thinking about how we're going to get it published to the store and how we're going to present all those great features and all those great scenarios in the store so people are compelled to download the app and start using the app. So let's talk about that now. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back just for a second and talk about Windows 8 and some of the goals around Windows 8, and then compare that to some of the changes and updates we've made in Windows 8.1. So Windows 8 was all about providing an experience that worked across a broad spectrum of scenarios, whether it was work or play, and across a really wide range of devices, whether it's an 8-inch Slate or a 10-inch convertible or a 15-inch laptop, or even like a huge 30-inch all-in-one, and providing like a modern app experience that was designed for mobile and touch and cloud-connected services. And we really saw that in the Start screen and Windows Store apps. And that resulted in hundreds of millions of app downloads across all Windows users across across the world. And we've seen a lot of updated and new apps like Facebook and Twitter and Flipboard over the past few weeks. And we delivered those experiences across more than 200 countries across the world. And if you think about me as an app publisher, someone that's selling software or selling a product, being able to leverage the scale of Microsoft to take that experience that I've created and be able to bring that to users across 200 different countries. I mean, literally just all across the world is really, really super powerful, and something that's unique to the Windows ecosystem and unique to the Windows Store. And when we came out with Windows 8 and at the first build conference, we really talked about what we wanted to accomplish in partnership with app publishers. And there are three tenets around that. And the first was partnership. So making it possible for you to be a publisher, to design and develop and create a really, really strong app, and for you to put trust in Microsoft to be the retailer of that application. So for that app to be sold in the Microsoft Store, and making that an experience that's a great experience for you as a partner and a publisher, both from the perspective of that process as well as the end result of that process of how your app is represented in the store and sold in the store. And we also talked about flexibility. So how can we provide an ecosystem for apps such that you as the publisher have the flexibility, easy for me to say, to decide exactly how you're going to sell that app and how you're going to monetize that app, right? And that's built into not only the way that the store works, but how the APIs around the store work, and we'll see that in a few minutes. And then also providing transparency and just making it super, super crystal clear to you as a publisher. How do I get my app into the store? What's the process? Is there transparency into that process? So I can always know where my app is, and if it, for some reason, failed certification, I can have an easy view into that process and how I need to address that, so I can certify for the second try if I didn't make it on the first try. And over the course of Windows 8, that year, we did a lot of listening and we did a lot of thinking about how we could improve those experiences. And you're going to see those reflected in Windows 8.1 when we start talking about some of the updates to the store and updates to the process that you use as a publisher to get that app that you spent a lot of effort and blood, sweat, and tears designing and creating, making sure that you have a great experience as a publisher, getting it into the store and then after it's in the store. So let's talk about that now and just talk about Windows 8.1 just from a very, very high level and some of the goals that we had about improving the store experience, not only for end users, helping them find apps that they love and use every day and rate really highly, but also for you as a publisher, making sure that you have a great experience with the store when you're ready to get your app submitted and published out to the world. So in Windows 8.1, we made a lot of advancements and improvements to the Windows Store to make it as simple as possible for millions of customers from around the world to discover, try, and buy your app from practically anywhere in the world. And our goal was really on both sides of that equation. From the user's perspective, make it easy for them to find that app they're going to fall in love with and use every day. And then make it easy for you as the publisher of that app to get your app in the store and make it discoverable and easy to try for users and easy for them to buy. So you as a publisher are successful, working in partnership with Microsoft as the retailer of your app in the Windows Store. So let's talk about some of those updates in more detail. So Windows 8.1, just all up, is a free update for Windows 8 users. You're going to go into the store and you'll see an update in the Windows Store that talks about the new Windows 8.1 update that you can install right there from the store. All your Windows 8 apps will continue to work. You'll also have access to the new Windows 8.1 apps and a lot of the features that we've talked about recently, like the new windowing features and the new tile support for like the larger tiles, as well as this new search features and all the things we've talked about over the past couple of days. And that really provides that improved personality and patterns and platform that we were talking about as early as the first session on day one, where you publish an app for Windows 8.1 to the store and you can leverage all those experiences and all those platforms to provide these new great experiences. Like even probably the simplest one to think about is that windowing experience, where you can be an app that has side-by-side windows of your own app or participating in scenarios like we saw with Share, where you've got or the contact contract, where I've got the ability to click on that contact and see a map of where they are, get some driving directions, send it to my phone, and then go back to the launching app. So some really great new experiences there that I get as a Windows 8.1 publisher. But there's also a new Windows Store experience. So it's driven really behind the idea that we wanted to make it as easy as possible for users to discover the apps that they're going to be interested in, try them out, and buy them, and build as many of those merchandising experiences as possible into the platform, so it's really easy for you to pick the right monetization strategy for your app that kind of matches your scenarios and matches what your app is great at. And then use the power of Bing and big data as well as machine learning to really build what Bing knows about applications and what Bing knows as a search engine into the store to make it easy for us to surface the app that the user is interested in or looking for without a lot of effort. So this is just a screenshot of what you will see as a Windows 8 user. Next time you go into the store, you'll see this update to Windows 8.1 for free, and if you tap on that, it'll walk you through the process of installing the update directly through the Windows Store.
And in a very easy way, it just tells you, we'll install it now and just go on with your work or what you were doing, and we'll get back to you when it's needed. So it's a very nice process.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like any other Windows App Store, it installs in the background and you get notified when it's ready. Yep. And it's a great experience. And then when you install that, you have access to all the new Windows 8.1 apps and all these new features. If someone's still on Windows 8 and they're browsing through the store and they see a new Windows 8.1 app, you'll see this little message here, update to Windows 8.1 to get this app. So they'll be prompted. So if you publish a Windows 8.1 app and there's lots of buzz around it and lots of great ratings and stuff like that, people will be prompted to install the update, so they'll be able to get access to your application and all those new features. So let's just look at the Windows Store in Windows 8.1, and I know we've seen it a couple of times over a few of the sessions over the past couple of days, but I kind of want to just drill down into some of these details so you can get an idea of what the user experience is going to be and how they're going to experience the store and how they're going to be discovering apps day in, day out as they're looking for new games to play or new productivity apps or new music apps, news apps, and so on. So I'm just going to go into the Windows Store, and probably the first thing you'll notice from the tile here is that little badge to show how many updates are available. You don't see that here in the Windows Store for Windows 8.1, and the reason why is Windows apps automatically update. So they'll automatically update in the background, so users don't have to think about installing the latest version of your application. They'll get it automatically installed for them. So it releases you from having to worry about the service burden of getting everybody up on the latest features of your app.
And you can switch it off, of course, if you want.
Yeah,
if you want to do it manually, that's possible as well.
Right, right. The user's totally in control, but by default, it's going to update for you. So I'll go ahead and launch the application, the Windows Store app. And we'll just go here to the first screen. And the first thing you're going to notice about the store is some of the differences from the Windows 8 version. And one of the biggest things is just this initial spotlight that just calls out some really hot apps. I'm sorry about that. I meant to flip and I ended up moving through. So you can see just a bunch of different new apps like the new Mint app, an update to Nook or a special offer for Nook. And this space here is owned by the store team. It's not something you can buy or purchase into. It's editorialized, so the editors of the Windows Store, looking at what's being installed and what's being highly rated and the apps that have a great amount of buzz around them, that's how they decide what goes into this location, right? So you always know that this is going to be a hot new game or an up-and-coming game that everybody's talking about, game or app or whatever it might be. And we still have categories. Categories are still important. So we surface this in top categories where we'll give you the opportunity to see all the games that are available. And again, we have that spotlight so you can see some of the featured and new and interesting games, right, as well as going through individual lists. And then the next thing that you're going to notice is this Picks for You section of the list. And this is actually powered by Bing data. So we're going through and looking at other applications that you installed or you've used and suggesting new apps to you. So me as a publisher, I can see how Bing's going to be using its machine learning and big data together with what I'm publishing about metadata of my app and how many installs it's getting and ratings and so on, to help me find the apps that I'm interested in. So for example here for Tiny Death Star, this is popular with people who have Halo Spartan Assault, which is an app that I play and like quite a bit. And you can see here I can click on this link to say not interested, or I can turn this feature off. Again, users in control. But this is something that helps me find the games that I'm interested in. And over the course of having Windows 8.1, this has been a great driver to help me pick out new games and new apps that I'm really interested in. And then the next one that you'll see is trending games. So again, looking at apps that are getting a lot of ratings or a lot of downloads, and then Bing is surfacing them here in another list. And in each of these lists, just like we've seen, follows that common navigation pattern. So I can go in here and look at all 1,000 apps within that list. And then you'll see new and rising, top paid, and top free. And again, Bing is collecting this data to build these lists, either specific to me or specific to that particular piece of metadata, whether it's the top paid game or the top free game, right? And then, of course, search is an incredibly important aspect of this. So I can search for the name of a game that someone suggested to me, or I can go through and browse, but that would get me to an individual page for an app like this Crash Course Go from Microsoft Studios. And you can see here, again, it follows kind of that hub pattern where I have information about different screens, so I can see if this is an interesting game I'm interested in playing. I can see its categories. I can see there are other apps by the publisher. And you can see we've really flattened this page out to support one page that I can kind of go through and see everything I need to know about this application in order to decide on whether I want to install it, right? And of course, We still have a lot of great abilities for browsing. So if I go back to the home screen or just go anywhere in the app and look at the nav bar, it's got a great nav bar that helps me flip through and see all the different kinds of categories that I can install the game that I'm looking for, right? And that's the Windows Store for Windows 8.1. Okay, so let's talk about some of these new features in Windows 8.1. And again, as you're thinking about your app and you're thinking about the features and scenarios, one of them is, needs to be not only how you're going to publish and what you're going to publish to draw people into your game, but also how you're going to monetize your app and support the publishing effort that you've made. So there's a lot of new updates. One is stored value and gift cards. So in a lot of markets around the world, including the 41 markets where we're supporting these stored value and gift cards, many people don't have credit cards, but they still want to be able to publish software. So if they don't have credit cards or PayPal or something along those lines, they can go into a retailer and purchase a stored value or a gift card that they can use to purchase apps through the Windows Store. So again, just removing some friction for people that are interested in buying your app or buying things in your app like consumables and so on. We now support Alipay, so the leading provider of e-commerce in China, and if you know about Alipay, it's incredibly popular, and it actually uses SMS to handle the asynchronous transaction between Alipay and the retailer. We take care of all of that for you, so it just looks like another purchase to you, and we're taking care of the details of closing the transaction for Alipay. So another great example of how the store as a retailer helps in the sale of your app. In Windows 8.1, we're supporting consumables, so the ability to have purchases that are consumed and purchased again, like armor or coins or flavored sprinkles for ice cream apps, like all sorts of things that you're seeing that your kids are probably playing and stuff like that. Great new support for in-app catalog. So if you've got a catalog of items that can be purchased through the application, you can update those as a catalog without having to republish the app. So that's a great new support for catalog and in-app retailing. Support for M-rated games. So we got a lot of feedback that based on the rich history of gaming on the PC, there's a lot of folks that enjoy games that fall into the M-rated category, and that's something that we're adding for Windows 8.1, and with age ratings and parental controls, it's really easy for you to decide whether that's an app that you're going to allow to be installed on your device or on a device in your family. And then app bundles. Max app packages are 8 gig in size, and you might have a lot of content in your game that's maybe purchasing different chapters of a game, or even different resources that you want to download on demand and install, like based on different device capabilities, like the app packages that we talked about in windowing, or different content packages. And app bundles make that super, super easy, where Windows will handle all of the details of downloading the right resource at the right time. In some cases, just by configuration, right? So being able to say that this is the right package for French-speaking users of my apps, and having that installed if they've got that French language installed on their PC. Okay, and then increased app roaming limits. So we wanted to, in Windows 8, we wanted to make sure that you could purchase an app and then install it on all your devices, but not necessarily have an app that's people are reusing accounts and installing that over tons and tons of different devices. And we actually got feedback that for some apps that was perfectly okay. If it's an advertising driven app, maybe you do want to just let people unrestricted install that on any device they want to with any account. So we're actually in the background protecting publishers via the service, while kind of removing that limit on how many devices you can install the app on.
Well, it's 81 now, right?
It's actually they're doing
it says 81.
Yeah, they're doing a little bit of magic in the background to make sure that it's not, the service isn't being spoofed, but still providing that freedom and that openness. Okay, so we had talked about partnership, flexibility, and transparency at the onset of this presentation. Let's go into that a little bit more deeply and talk about how that applies to Windows 8.1. So again, we wanted Windows 8.1 from a publisher's perspective. We wanted the Windows Store to make it as easy as possible for you as a publisher to distribute, update, and get paid for the apps that you design, develop, and publish. So from that perspective, we wanted to make really as friction-free a process as humanly possible for you as the publisher, so you can kind of come up with the monetization scenario for your app, design that into your app, test it, go through the publication process as seamlessly and quickly and transparently as possible, and then on the other side of that, make it as easy as possible for people to install your game and for your game or your app or whatever, and get the right analytics so you can continue to tune that kind of feedback loop in that publishing process to continue to be a very successful app publisher. So let's look at that in depth, and we'll start off just by talking about the partnership. So when you're thinking about being a publisher and working with an app store, you really need to think about economics and how you're going to be successful as an app publisher. And for publishers of Windows Store apps to the Windows Store, the economics are fantastic. So for new apps, you retain 70% of the price or revenue from selling that app in the store. And that's, I mean, you know, an industry standard balance. But when we go to being over $25,000 of revenue, you actually you retain 80% of that. So we're still, you know, retaining some of those fees for, you know, maintaining the service and maintaining the store and things like the push notifications and stuff like that. But the economics of the Windows Store are fantastic, where we go from a 70-30 to an 80-20 split as soon as you've made $25,000 with that application. So great economics. Okay. You also have incredible global reach when you publish to the Windows Store. So we have the store and apps in over 100 languages in 70 different developer markets, 70 new developer markets for a total of 191 in total. And then we provide local pricing and settlement across 70 different markets, including the top 40 by GDP. And that's something that's really, really important for me to understand as a publisher. And the fact that, you know, I could be based in America and created an app that I've got localized to a bunch of different languages and countries and regions, you know, across the world. And I'm, you know, in America, and I'm selling that as an American company. But all the tendering in all of the different countries as far as their currency and conversion and taxes and tendering and all that stuff is taken care of for me by the store. So if you think about getting the power of being able to sell something globally without having to be, you know, kind of immersed in some of those global details, it's a really great story for me as a publisher. Okay, next let's talk about flexibility. And this is all about me having control over how I monetize my application, how I sell and monetize my application, even though I'm you know, working with Microsoft and the Windows Store to actually sell that app. So the first thing is you control pricing over the app. App can be anywhere from free or priced from anywhere from $1.49 to $999.99. And it's a tiered model, so the tiers kind of increase with price, so you're not, you know, going up by $1 when you get into that, you know, hundreds of dollars ranges. So it's tiered, so it makes a lot of sense, and this helps us with the tendering across different currencies across different countries. And the app is actually sold at a comparable price point worldwide. So you know that if it's an app that's selling for $1.49 and that's in US dollars and that's your home country, you can be assured that the currency, the price and the local currency across all the different markets you support, it's going to be analogous. So you know that it's going to, you know, feel like a great value proposition for, you know, the scenarios that your app supports and what your app does, right? So you don't have to worry about that as a publisher. And then from a business model perspective, you have a lot of flexibility as well. So you have, first of all, a choice of commerce engines. You can use the Windows Store and the Windows platform with those industry-leading economics that I had mentioned, that 70-30 split or over $25,000, that 80-20 split. And we'll take care of, you know, all the details around tendering and taxes and selling in local markets and currency conversion and all that stuff. And that's fantastic. If you want to use your own third-party commerce engine, let's say that you've got one already that you're used to and want to use that, you can of course use that within your application. And that tendering and all the taxes and all those details is taken care of by that third-party commerce engine. And then from a economics or from a revenue standpoint, Microsoft's not involved. You can still publish the app to the store and use that third-party engine, and we're not retaining any of the revenue because you're obviously using some other engine to manage all that for you. Beyond that, you have a choice of business models from the Windows 8 days. You might be familiar with like paying for download, time-limited trials, feature-limited trials, or in-app purchases. We've got a few more in Windows 8.1, like the ability to do consumables, as well as a lot of updates to the advertising engine and the way that we support advertising within Windows Store applications. And when I'm thinking about my app and I'm thinking about scenarios, I really do need to think about my business model and how that maps to the scenarios that I'm going to be supporting. And this is just a little bit of information that we shared at the last build about industry trends on monetization. And this is, these numbers won't add up to 100% because a lot of apps will actually mix back and forth, like maybe ads during the freemium and then remove them later once you've purchased the app and stuff like that. But you can see here that advertising is by far the most popular. There's a lot of apps that are doing pay for download, but also a lot of apps that are doing like in-app purchases and freemium and subscriptions. So understanding these models and how they're built into the platform and how they work is a great opportunity for you to kind of match the right monetization scheme or business model to exactly the scenarios that you're going to be supporting within your app. So let's go through each one of those one by one, just so we can think about some of the things that we need to design for, some of the things we need to consider when we're thinking about monetization. And the first is pay for download. So pay per download is really straightforward. I'm just going to put a price on the app, and if you want to use the app, you need to buy it. Click the buy button and pay the $1.49 or $19.99 or whatever it might be. But when you're thinking about this, this really requires a strong brand relationship with the user or a lot of trust for the user, because they have to pay up front to even try the app or experience the app for the first time. And even at low price points, this might not be the best option because it does require a lot of trust. And if you're a really, really, really strong brand that has a lot of following and tons of buzz around your app, this might work just fine. But for new applications and new publishers, you might want to consider one of the other models that gives the user the opportunity to try your app and build trust with the app and build a relationship with you as a publisher before you start asking for fees or purchases and so on. And that leads us into the strength behind the trial experience and the trial support within the Windows Store APIs. So the strongest thing about trials is they allow the user to try before they buy, right? So a user can say, hey, that app looks kind of interesting to me, and I can try that out without having to make any kind of commitment. And if I love it and it's a great immersive experience and I start using it every day, maybe at some point at the end of that, either time limited trial like 30 days or a week or whatever, or feature limited trial, I go through all the initial screens and levels of a game or something along those lines. Then I'm ready to make a commitment and hand over some cash to that publisher and have ownership of that app and being able to use it for a longer period of time or with more features or whatever it might be. The great thing about these trial scenarios is they're built into the platform. So I don't have to code and maintain and secure code within my app to do something like a feature-limited trial. That's all handled by Windows, or even a time-limited trial. Like I don't have to be sitting there and checking. I get all that information from Windows, and it's essentially something that's just built into the platform, and it takes care of it for me. I just kind of declare how I'm going to be a trial, and then take care of the license information in my app and turn on or turn off the right features accordingly. So let's talk about the impact of trials before we kind of go through that process. We learned looking at Windows Phone and Windows 8 that trials have a huge impact on the success of a publisher. On average, you'll see about 12 times as many downloads if you support a trial rather than just being a upfront fee app or a purchase-only app. And that results in seeing trial features in about 70% of the top paid apps and about 95% of the top grossing apps. So you can see this is a really, really strong story with regards to monetization. So consider trials as being something that might be able to get the app in users' hands and getting them falling in love with your scenarios before you ask for a purchase.
Yeah, and even if you have a strong brand, maybe there's a new edition of your game, and a trial is then also a very good way to get familiar with that new levels, and if you like it, so it gives trust in the hand of the user. And
and I know for me as a Windows 8.1 user, I'll go through and I'll consider a purchase to make sure that it's something I'm really going to be interested in. But a trial, I mean, the apps are installed so easily and removed so easily, and they're installed by the Windows Store. I don't have to worry about there being like leftover cruft or anything on the machine. I just install them and try them. Right. So it's a great way for me as a user to figure out whether I want that game or want that app.
Yeah.
Okay. And we kind of walk through this process, and you can see here with trials like the Crash Course Go, it shows that it's a free trial right on the top level of the Windows Store. So you can see that it's a free trial, and we surface that because we feel like it's so important and people are looking for it, or even in that list of top free apps, right? So this, like anything else, needs to be a scenario that I design for. I really need to design for a great trial experience. So if one of my scenarios is to provide a free trial that hopefully leads to some sort of a purchase, either after a certain amount of time or after they use a certain number of features, I have to design for that, because if part of making a great app is making sure that those scenarios are easy and compelling to complete. So you want them to be very, very clear and very, very direct, and kind of lead the user through that process so they get to the result that they want, which is them having an app that they've purchased that they love and you being a successful publisher. So you need to think about, how will the features be limited? Will it be by time? Will it be by, available features? Will it be, features that are turned off for a while and then or turned on for a while then turned off? And then design for trial expiration. What happens at the end of that week or the end of that month, right? Or after they've used that particular widget within your app for 30 times or whatever you've designed for. And then also design for the app purchase experience. So if the user gets to the end, you communicate to them, by the way, this was a free trial and you've reached the end of the trial, make it very clear how they go about purchasing the app, and provide them that link that they can go directly to the store and go ahead and purchase the app and then come back and enjoy the full features of your app. And the platform supports that through events and APIs and even testing tools, so you can test all the different permutations for your app before you publish. And we're going to look at that here in a second. So the first thing that you'll notice when you're looking at doing trials within your application is that time-based trials are just built into the platform. So there's no code involved, it's just a configuration. You go to publish the app, and that's one of the settings that you can make in the store, is to say, here's the price of my app, but I'm also going to support a free trial, like 7 days. And then the management of that and the timing of that is all managed through Windows. You're going to, after 7 days, the user clicks on the app, they're prompted by the Windows Store to go to the Windows Store and purchase the app, and there's nothing that you need to do in the application. Trial licensing is something that's built into the APIs. I know we had talked about this was going to be design sessions, but I think you understanding kind of, even as a designer, understanding kind of some of these different features of the APIs will help you work with the development team to kind of design what the scenarios you're going to be supporting within your app. So trial licensing is something that I can go through and ask windows.applicationmodel.store.current-app-simulator, and this simulates the store purchasing process so you can test it during your development phase. You can ask that current app .license information and get license information and then register for an event. So anytime that license information changes, you'd be able to do the right thing in your app. Like maybe the trial is expired, or maybe they went ahead and purchased your app, and do the right thing. So there's the JavaScript for that. And then you'd want to ask whenever you're going into like a new page, or enabling or disabling that content, or enabling the button that lets them do something behind that trial, you're able to in your code, just be able to say, like this JavaScript code, license information.isTrial. And if it's a trial, turn off the feature and communicate to the user what they need to do to turn on the feature, like what would it cost or so on. Or if they've already purchased the feature, turn it on, right? And same thing for XAML. I'm getting access to the current app simulator license information and then tracking the event of that licensing changes in some way. And Windows will surface that event to my app so I can account for it, in my UI or in my scenarios. Right? And the same thing, or I can say, is the license active? Is it a trial? I'll turn off the feature, communicate to the user how they turn it on, through purchase, or if it's already been purchased, then I just enable them to use the feature. Right? And the great thing about it is that's all built into the platform, so I don't have to worry about writing the code, securing the code, maintaining the code around those purchasing experiences. The store just provides it to me. Okay? So let's talk about in-app purchases. So you want to design, again, in-app purchases as being a scenario that's core to what your app does and what your app is great at. And this can be a bunch of different kinds of purchases. They can be durable purchases that the user owns forever, like a new feature or capability in the app. It could be expiring durable purchases, so you purchase it and it works for amount of time, and then you purchase it again if you want to continue to use it. Or consumables, where the user buys it, they consume it, and then if they want to use it again, like armor or coins or something along those lines, filters within the app, they can do that and buy it again and again as long as they want to use it. Or like we had mentioned, being able to manage a catalog of items within your app and be able to publish that without having to republish your application. So in-app purchases, again, it's the same flow where it's built into the application. So I can ask, via license information, I can ask the product licenses and look up the particular feature that I'm looking for, like you'll see in this JavaScript code. And then I can ask, do they own it or not? And if they don't own it, I can go ahead and say, okay, request the purchase asynchronously, and that will pop up the UI, for either the test UI if I'm testing this locally, or during runtime in an actual production environment, it'll actually pop up the Windows UI, Windows Store UI, to prompt them to purchase. Okay, and the same thing for XAML. Do they have a license for this particular feature? If they don't, prompt them to purchase. If they complete the purchase, then I'll go along with the scenario by turning on that feature. Consumables follow that same kind of process, except for they can be consumed over and over and over again. So you initiate a purchase through the UI. The app actually builds and maintains the purchase history based on the Windows Store APIs completing that process. You grant the user the access to that consumable feature, right? Reflected in the UI, like, hey, you've got 100 new coins, or you've got this new feature or spell or weapon or whatever it might be. And then you report fulfillment back to the Windows Store API, so they know that that purchase was successfully done. So they will know the next time the user requests a purchase. Do they still have coins, or are they out of coins? How many am I going to let them purchase the next time? Okay. So again, I'm going to use that current app simulator, which during development gives me the ability to simulate store experiences. And I can say request product purchase async, and I'll give it a product name, right? And if that was successful, I'll track the transaction ID for that purchase, right? If it wasn't successful, then I have to ask why it wasn't fulfilled. Like maybe they already had that filter, or still had coins, or something along those lines. And then I can track that within my application and go through a scenario where the status wasn't fulfilled. Like maybe they decided to cancel the process or something along those lines. And same thing with XAML. I can just ask product purchase status. I can say await current app simulator.request product purchase async, and give it a name of that particular consumable, and then check the purchase results to say, did it succeed? Awesome. I'm going to add that to the UI and track that purchase via the purchase or the transaction ID. If it's not fulfilled, then I'm going to check to why that particular app purchase or consumable purchase wasn't fulfilled. Was it a problem with the process, or do they already own it, or what it might be? Okay. And then wrapping up that process, I need to tell the Windows Store that the purchase was successful. Again, so I can mark it in the catalog. I can mark it that, it was this 100 purchase of coins is different from the last 100 purchase of coins. It wasn't like a failed purchase and a retry. Okay, same thing with XAML. And then during the development process, it's really easy for me to simulate different licensing scenarios and purchasing options, so I can go through and test all of these and make sure I'm getting exactly the right experience for the scenario that I wanted to have about monetization. And I can do that just by providing the app different licensing files. Like you can see here, I can call the current app simulator.reload simulator async and pass it one of those files and define different purchases, whether they have the feature, they've purchased the feature or haven't purchased the feature, and then test the end-to-end scenario within my app. So another option for monetizing my app is advertising. Now, advertising is something that is incredibly prevalent for app publishers. It's a great monetization opportunity. I can have that free application that kind of a friction-free purchase for my users, where they just have a free or a trial app, and I can still monetize it via advertising, and maybe turn off that advertising once they purchase the app, or just leave it a free app for all time, and it'll just be completely monetized through advertising. Again, you have the freedom and flexibility to determine whether you want to use the Microsoft advertising platform, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes, or if you want to use your own advertising engine. If you're a large publisher and you have your own advertising engine, and you can use that, and then you retain all the revenues, and of course you maintain and manage and secure that advertising engine. This is going to be, advertising within apps is going to be a $10 billion business by 2015, and we see that global in-app advertising growing by about 41% over the course of that time between now and 2015. So it's definitely growing. It's definitely a great opportunity for us as app publishers to have that friction-free way to get the app on the device and still monetize it. So if I wanted to use the Microsoft advertising engine, there's a lot of great reasons to do so. One, just from a monetization standpoint, they're working with the top 500 advertisers. You get paid in your local currency, just like you do when you're selling your app, across the world. Windows advertising takes care of that tendering and that currency conversion and so on, just like the Windows Store does. And then you're leveraging essentially Microsoft Advertising's global sales force as far as working with advertisers to get those advertising units into inventory and then sent through your app through the integrated ads. It's engaging for users because the apps are in line with the experiences we'll see here in one of the demos. So they're very rich and high quality experiences that you'd expect from Microsoft. And they're safe and secure because they're actually managed within the app itself and pick up all of the easy protection and sandboxing that you would get for any Windows Store app. And they're easy to implement because the SDK is integrated right into Visual Studio 2013 and supports both XAML as well as HTML apps. So Microsoft Advertising for Windows 8.1. There's ad sizes that match up really, really well to screen sizes for Windows 8.1 apps. So regardless of whether your app's running full screen or in a windowing mode, you can find an app size that works for you. The cost or the revenue for the advertisements is in cost per 1,000 impressions, or CPM. That's just the pricing model that the advertising world uses. And when the impression is actually counted, when 60% of the ad is shown, not clicked on, but just shown, and that's when you would get credit for that particular impression, right? One thing you want to keep in mind, and we'll talk about this when we talk more about the store itself, is apps targeting advertising are only available for age groups of 12 and up. So it requires a connected app, and a networked app is something that requires a target age of 12 years and up. So it's something to think about. And the other thing to think about is obviously revenue sharing. So I retain 70% of the revenue that's generated from the advertisements, and Microsoft retains 30%. That's the cost that they use to maintain the service and maintain the sales force and the inventory and so on. Okay, so how do I go about integrating ads into my app with Microsoft Advertising SDK? Well, the first thing that I do is just go into 2013, and the SDK is automatically installed, so I just turn it on. And then I start designing the ad integration into my app and use some of the sample ad IDs to make sure everything's working. Then I go into PubCenter, which is the place that I go to activate all my live ads, and I define all the ads that I'm going to need for my application, like what category they're in, what style they are, and so on. And then I get my app ID and then my ad unit ID that I actually place in my code. So when I publish to the store, those ads are going to be served up within my application. Okay. So probably the best way to do this is just to go ahead and, let's talk about ad sizes first. So here's the new ad sizes within Windows 8.1. And you can see here that they fit really, really well into a lot of the layout choices that you're going to have, whether you've got a detailed page or a hub page, whether you've got a consistent grid of content or you're varying it like in a hub control and so on. So here you can see the different sizes that you can account for when you're deciding how to integrate that advertising into your app. And now let's look at this process. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go to an app that the Microsoft Advertising team put together to show you the ad experience, so what it's going to look like in your application. So probably the easiest one to think about is these are just different ad styles, and here's a 160 by 600 anchor ad that I can click on here, and it turns into a full screen ad. And notice that I'm still in the app, right? So if I go back, I'm still in the application. I don't leave it. I still got the impression there when I see the ad. All right, there's others like full screen video. So let's click on this. So here you can see it's a 250 by 250 pixel. It's marked as an advertisement. When I click on it, that's going to launch this full screen video experience here about the Ford Mustang, right? And I can view this and either go and learn more, or if I decide to just stay in the app, I can go ahead and click the back button and I'm still in the app. So it's a great combination of being immersive and integrated, like with the layout of the app, without ever having taking me away from the app unless I want to act on that advertisement. And again, just showing the impression is what gets you credit as a publisher. The next example that I wanted to show you is actually how I would do that work to get the Microsoft Ad integrated via the Ad SDK into my Windows 8.1 app. So what I've got here is just a quick Visual Studio application. And what I did is I just went through the getting started experience from the Ads SDK. And here you'll see that I've just got like a standard hub template. This is just like File, New Project. If I scroll to the end, you can see where I integrated the ad. Oh, looks like maybe I have a network connection problem because it's not showing the ad. Let me try it one more time. Just stop that. Try one more time. I'm sorry, maybe I've lost my connection here, but we'll see here in a second that I've reserved this area for the ad within my app. Let's talk about how I did that. So I'm just in Visual Studio here, and the first thing that I need to do is just enable the SDK itself. So I go to Extensions and Updates. And then here you can see that I have the SDK installed for JavaScript as well as for XAML. And these are installed with Visual Studio 2013, so I don't need to do anything to get the Windows 8 versions of the SDK. Right? And then I go ahead and just add a reference to the SDK that you can see that I've done here. Right? And then I can actually connect to the service. So one of the first things I could do is there's sample ad SDK or app and ad numbers or IDs that I can use within my application just to test out that everything's working. And I would do that just by going into the XAML, for example, here. You can see right at the end of that hub template, I made a reference to the UI.addControl. I provided an application ID. I provided an ad unit ID, and then what the size is according to the ad, according to the width and height of that ad, and then I'm just surfacing that as a UI element on the page. And once I've done that, I made sure that everything's working. I can go into the Pub Center and create an account, and then sign up for the ads that I'd like to show. So here you can see I've logged into the Pub Center, right? And I can look at different reports based on ads that I've already seen. I could go in and set up new ads. Looks like my connection, looks like I've been signed out. Give me 1 second to sign back in. I can go in and define ads, like here's my sample. Just define apps. And then within those apps, I can design or set up ad units that I'd be able to use in a Windows 8 or Windows 8.1 application. Here you can see that sample ad 160 by 600, and it's got an ID of 102.94.544. And you can see here, that's the ad that I have here, right? And I can also do that directly from Visual Studio. So I can say add connected service, click on Microsoft Ads, and then click on the app itself, and then click on configure. And I can manage all of that just directly within Visual Studio and create new ad sizes, give them names and so on. And then when I'm done doing that, it generates a text file with all that information in there that I can use to integrate those ads directly into my application. Right, and you'll see that here. There's that ad sample page.txt, and here's the XAML that I would paste in to integrate that ad. Right? So very, very seamless, very easy to do. Okay. So when I'm thinking about ad integration, there's a few do's as far as designing the ads into your layout and your experience, using the Windows 8.1 layout guidance that we had already talked about, and then planning for times when there's no ads available. So you saw I lost that connection there for just a couple of minutes, and there was no ad served up. So I definitely want to collapse that down so it doesn't look like there's a a gaping hole in my layout. So plan for those times that might be happening. And then plan for your app to be resized. So your app's going to be resized, and maybe that really long app that looks great full screen needs to be substituted with another size when you're at other scaling or not other window sizes. And then don't bolt ads onto any real estate in your app, and don't oversaturate your app. And don't do advertising in a way that distracts from what your app is great at. It should just feel like a seamless integration into your scenario and the way that your app works. Okay? So when I'm planning for window sizes, I need to think about the different ad sizes and the different default minimums or window sizes, like 320 pixels and below, 320 pixels above, as well as full screen. And you can see here, this is a chart from the Ads and Apps page that I've listed in the resources, so you can see obviously that a 728 by 90 advertisement's not going to work great at 320 pixels, so I probably want to substitute a different size like 250 to 250. And it's, again, all about the layout and thinking about how to account for a great layout in those window sizes. Okay? And again, I had mentioned that there's lots of demo app IDs and ad IDs that I can use. And when I'm actually interested in using real ads, I can go in and define my application, define all the ads that I'm going to use, and then use those IDs with my app that I can take into production and actually publish to the store. And then I get great publisher reporting to see how many impressions I'm getting and what's the revenue stream that I'm seeing and so on. And that's all through the Pub Center with Microsoft Advertising. Okay? We've actually already looked at that, so let's talk about transparency. And transparency is all about getting comfortable with and being transparent about the process of publishing. So me as a publisher, I know exactly what's going to happen during the entire process. Whether it's during design, what do I need to provide in order to have a great store listing, During submission, what's the process going to be like, and what work can I do up front to make sure that I pass the certification process on the first try? And then after publication, how do I analyze? How do I get the right information to help me tune my application to be even more successful in the future? Let's talk about each of those, and starting, of course, with the design. So the Windows 8.1 certification requirements are built around a few very simple principles, and they're designed to give users a really quality experience as far as being a high-quality app that doesn't crash and has an age rating and has a privacy statement and stuff like that. So giving users a great experience, but also for you as the publisher, making sure you have a quality experience so you know exactly what the requirements are and what's expected of you, and publishing that in a very concise and clear way such that it's very easy for you to see what are the requirements, if there's changing coming in the requirements, what are those updates, and how do they affect you as a publisher. And one of the things that you're going to see with the Windows Store is that we don't have carve-outs. So we're not ever going to carve out a category that we say, hey, this is only for Microsoft or only for Microsoft apps. We believe that we can publish great first-party apps. We want to make it possible for everyone to publish great apps, and we'd rather compete on a scenario or app basis rather than doing a carve-out and excluding competition. Okay. In order to publish, I'll need a Windows Store developer account. For individuals, that's $49. For business accounts, that's $99. Registration just takes a little bit, just a few minutes. Publication can start right away. Some of the instruments for payment and stuff like that can take a little bit longer because of legal requirements across all the different countries that we work with.
And you have now also support for the Windows Phone development, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah,
one account for both platforms.
Right. So when I'm preparing for publication, there's a lot of things that I need to think about. The first thing is just go through the requirements and make sure that you understand them and understand what's required of you as a publisher. The next thing you need to do is reserve an app name and make sure that it's unique. Just like having a unique URL on the web, you want to make sure that you get that, you reserve that app name according to your account before you start any work, because no one wants to get to the point where they get to the part where they're ready to publish and they say, my app name is Foo, and there's already a Foo app out there and you can't use that name. You want to write a really compelling app description. You want to provide really compelling screenshots that show off all those great scenarios that you've designed and built into your app. And if you think about the great at statement, that should really be, that and the scenarios that you have should be a really a guiding light on exactly what you want to put into that Windows Store entry, so people will be drawn into the app and want to try it. You're going to pick a suitable store age rating and the requirements across age rating, like if you're going to connect to a network, you have to be 12 and above. Those kinds of things are very, very clear in the requirements. And then assign your app to a suitable category and subcategory. So when people are looking for games or productivity apps or news apps, your app will show up. And then you're going to go through the submission process. So you want to test your app for the publication requirements, and that includes all the supported platforms, regions, languages, accessibility features you're going to support, and test across all those different flavors. So if you support, Windows RT, you make sure that you test on Windows RT, right? And then go through and pre-test your app. So you can actually use the Windows App Certification Kit, the same test we use when we're testing apps for publication. You can do that beforehand in order to make sure that your app's going to pass those tests before you ever go through the submission process. Okay? And then when you're ready to submit, you'll upload your app package through the publication process. It'll go through some pre-processing steps to scan it for viruses and make sure it's all clean and ready to go. It'll go through some tests like security tests and performance tests, again using the same tests that you can pre-run using the Windows App Certification Kit. And then it's ready for release, and it goes through the release process where it'll be signed and published and ready for the store. And at that point, it's in the store. If you want to update it beyond like the obvious catalog and stuff like that we've talked about during monetization, it's something where you'd have to resubmit a new package. But at that point, it's in the store. People are finding it, hopefully rating it really highly and enjoying it and telling their friends about it. Okay. Now, beyond that publication is where the analytics come in. And this is something, here's the Windows App Certification Test Kit results. This tells you exactly, where or why not if you didn't pass, so you can take care of that within your application. Here's analytics. These are just example screenshots showing the ratings from the last 30 days and how many app downloads you've had versus maybe the category that you're in, crash rate and quality metrics. Again, so you can tune your app and tune the experience. There's even information about in-app purchases and transactions you can look at to see which in-app purchases are being really successful, and then figure out how to do that even more. And then information about different demographic patterns that you can look at to try and figure out who's buying your game and why, or who's not buying your game and why not. So you can keep doing the things that you're doing well and do them more. Okay, and that's the Windows Store and monetization. So when we recap here, Windows 8.1, there was a lot of new personality and principles and patterns that we wanted to support within Windows 8.1, building on the success of Windows 8. But one of the things that we wanted to do more than anything else was to create a great store experience. Again, making it really, really easy for users to find, try, and buy your application so you're successful as a publisher. And as a publisher, we made a promise under Windows 8 that we continue with Windows 8.1 to make that a great partnership. So making sure that we provide industry-leading economics and global reach across the world, so you can publish to the store and the Windows Store can take care of the fact that that's being sold in all these different countries and currencies and tax laws and so on. And doing that in a very, very flexible way. So you can pick the monetization scheme and the commerce engine that makes the most sense for you. And then doing it in a way that's transparent. So you know the requirements up front, you know what's required of you in order to get published in the store, and then afterwards you can get the analytics to make sure that the app that you have continues to be successful and more successful over time as an app that's being published in the store. Okay, so for resources, I listed a whole bunch of resources for app envisioning and thinking about monetization, and then all the different processes and tools that you can use for Windows Store apps from the Dev Center to make it really, really easy to submit, distribute, and promote and analyze your app. Okay, so it looks like we've got a question here. Can consumables be traded by users amongst themselves? That's interesting. So maybe I could buy 100 coins and trade that with somebody else for a weapon that they already have and stuff like that. I know that consumables are supported in Windows 8.1, and then that becomes an item or a content or a feature within your app. So maybe that's something they could trade amongst users, right, back and forth. I'm not really sure, but if you look up at the requirements that are up on the Windows Store site or up on the Dev Center, they walk through all the different requirements and a lot of details around how app purchasing and how consumables work. So that's something I haven't done in the past, so maybe that's something that's listed up in the requirements. Okay. So next, can you talk about in-app purchasing and how it works in the Windows App Store? Well, yeah. So there's actually two different parts of that process. One is during development, and the other is during once the app is published. And of course, you want to test all those different scenarios before you ever publish the app. So that current app simulator that I had talked about in the code lets you actually simulate the entire purchase experience without having to go through the real Windows Store purchase experience. You don't want to be testing in production, right? So you can simulate different licensing situations, you can simulate different purchasing situations, and do that all right at development time. So you can say, yeah, I'm testing, and they already had this purchase, they didn't have this one. When they go to purchase it, I'm going to simulate that the purchase failed, or I'm going to simulate the purchase succeeded and test that. If you go into the Windows Store itself, you've probably seen this as a user where you go to click on the purchase button and you call against the API to say what's going to be purchased in your catalog, and then you'll actually see the Windows UI pop up from the store to say, hey, this is a purchase, it costs this much, do you want to purchase it? And then it'll walk you through the purchasing process. Okay? So next question is, does or will the Windows Store support beta editions as the phone store? That's a great question.
It is.
Yeah. And do you know the answer?
No, I don't know.
Neither do I. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that one. That's something that if you go up to the Windows Store blog, it'd be a great question to post up on their blog. I'm sorry, I haven't tried that. Okay. Looks like that's the end of the questions, and that's the Windows Store app and monetization. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we're going to come back and talk about some lessons learned about great Windows Store apps that we, Microsoft, have published, and some of the things that we learned during the design process for them.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll see you in 10 minutes.